small-scale fisheries because it's gender. So here we have, as you see, only women. It's the opposite to this morning session where we have only men. So now we have 2, 4, 6, 7, and probably 8 women that they will speak. And we will see what is going on in Europe. And sorry for those that are not anymore members of European Union. I will speak about EU, and I am sorry for that. I will introduce first the people that they are here. I have Raquel, who is fisher on board of fishing vessel. There is Sandra. She's working for a women association in Galicia. Raquel, she's from Valencia, Gandia. Maribel, she's also fisher on fishing boat in Catalonia, in Tarragona. And then there is Sandrine, who is also woman on fishing boat, working in France. And then it starts to be a little more complicated. It's Christina, who is a researcher, and with other friends in the room, they just, now it's 6 months now, a new network, the Sister of the Arctic Blue, real on the north part of Europe. She will speak about what is this network. And then I have Constance, who is working in GFCM, so the Mediterranean Fisheries Committee. I told it in the other side, but doesn't matter. So all these ladies, I didn't do in purpose, finally. I didn't, in Europe, we have only 3% of women working on fishing boats. And here we have already 3. And from what I know in the room, there are somewhere there, some ladies, they are also fisher women in Andalusia, in the south part of Spain. And probably they will take the opportunity to speak. Marta told me at lunchtime that they don't speak English, and I told her that none of the ladies here, almost, Raquel, Marimbel, and Sandrine, they don't speak English either. So we will do what I told you at the beginning. This is artisanal of artisanal, because we will do consecutive translation and give the voice to the women of the fisheries sector. So just a few slides. I will go really fast because I take too much time by explaining the story. It seems that gender equality is a fundamental value for European Union. That started in 1977, and we continue to have the gender equality in the heart and in the objectives and in the values of European Union. So in 2007, the Lisbon Treaty reaffirmed the importance of gender equality in the European Union. So, European Union have since many years what they call gender equality strategy, and I just put the 2 last one, but in one of the previous one, when Maria Damanaki was a commissioner, promised to women in fisheries, promised to us, to the women in fisheries, that she will do as much she can for gender equality in fisheries. We didn't see anything since, but it doesn't matter. Let's wait. So the priorities of European Union is equal economic independence for women and men, equal pay for work of equal value, equality in decision making, dignity, integrity, and ending gender-based violence, and promoting gender equality beyond the EU. Of course, all that is the new strategy. Of course, all of that is for fulfilling the EU commitment for SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So this is the objective of European Union. Oh, now I don't have the magic hands. Ah, merde. I don't know. No, we are on the past slides. Okay. So if we are looking deeper, finally we find out that the different regulation on common fisheries policy regulation, they don't mention at all gender. Only the structure found they start to speak about women in fisheries, partner of fishers, fisher, and so on. So they call to take a particular attention to the women in fisheries, especially for the subsidies finally. So member states, they were called to include gender equality in national strategic plans and operational plans. But we know from the ex post evaluation of the previous structure found that inclusion of gender was really very light, even completely absent. But anyway, we say light because there is something in some of the countries that people are here that they've done something than other countries. So since the EMFF, gender became an indicator for the evaluation of the structure found. But we didn't have, at least I don't know if they've done it, the EMFF wasn't, we didn't have the ex post and mid evaluation. So we don't know what they've done for gender. We don't know anything. Tomorrow there is something about subsidies, and they ask us to speak as from gender perspective. Finally, we don't have anything to tell because we don't know how much money European Union spend for women, to women, and so on. So we continue. I just told, okay. So at least we realized something since 2017, and after a lot of lobby of social scientists and women networks, the European Union decided to collect the social data and unemployment. And so we just see what I just tell before, that we have 3.78% of women working in the total employment of fisheries, and the rest is for men. It was the first time that we've done this exercise. So this year, it will be the second time, because the last data collection framework gathered also data on gender on the 2021. So we will see what we have this year. We can just now tell that the quality of data was poor because member states didn't think that it will be obligatory or mandatory to provide the data, and they didn't offer too much. I am living in France, I am French also, and I know that the French government, the French authorities, they didn't give the real data, and I know that the Spanish also, they didn't give the real data. So I am wondering what they will provide this year. So then we have, this is about women in harvesting. Then we have the wife or the partner of fishers and agriculture farmers. So for 1986, Europe done good work, but didn't inform member states. They had a special directive for the spouse and the spouse at first, because partners became after evolution of the society. but a specific status to recognize women work as assisting work. I call unpaid labor, but I know that the economists, they don't call it unpaid labor. We have a problem what is unpaid labor. But anyway, this is another story. So in some countries, we open the possibility to women, wife of fishermen, acting as having active role in the fishing enterprise to get a specific social status. This is the case in France, and probably in Greece there is the same. But since 2010, that became obligatory for all the countries, for all member states. I know that all member states didn't apply the directive, so we need again to add some words on the directive to be better. So women create their own organization. We have two waves, one on the 90s, when fisheries sector was in crisis. A lot of women decided to build organizations to act for the survival of fisheries communities and also for women's rights. And then we have the second wave, and this first organization, they established the European Network of Women in Fisheries called ACTIA. And then we have the other organizations start to come out with the support of structure funds, especially in Spain, which is the only country that apply gender equality. I don't know if I can tell the Spanish colleagues, they can tell us if I am wrong. Or the ladies here, they will tell me if I am wrong. And that because finally we see that there is little space for women in fisher organization. Of course, not in all the cases. We have an example here, a woman who is leading fisher organization. So next speakers. We start from a regional level. We go to very local regional level in Galicia. Then we go to transnational level in the north. And then we come to the Mediterranean level with Costas. And then the other people, they will give us their experience, how they imagine fisheries equality, gender equality in fisheries. So, I will go there. Sandra. And another difference with other probably plenary sessions, we have very little PowerPoints.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Katia introduced me, I'm Sandra Mézaga, I'm the Secretary of Mujeres Salgadas. We are the only one and the biggest organization of women in fisheries in Galicia. And I think that also in Spain, unless AMUPESCA, this is the National Association of Women in Fisheries. Mujeres Salgadas was founded in 2016, and from the beginning we was independent and with our own personality. In fact, we are the only organization, the Women in Fisheries, that declares ourselves feminist. I would like to make a brief overview of women's problems and difficulties in the fisheries sector in Galicia. In Galicia, the majority of women in the fisheries are concentrated in self-fishing on food. One of the main problems is that they have irregular incomes. Their salary is between 14 and 16 euros per year, but they earn more in Christmas campaign and in summer, of course. Reduction coefficients. Actually, women in fisheries have a smaller reduction coefficient than men. The new law in Spain that is still in the parliament is going to change, but they forgot in this case about men and women that are working in mussel farm. They about bateiros and bateiras, and they promise us they are going to change that. Occupational disease and preventive health. There is no gender perspective at all. There is no consideration of menstruation and how complicated it can be for a woman to work at sea or shellfish when she has her period. Pain, discomfort, lack of space for changing, hygienic towels and things like that. And one of the great problems in Galicia is the clean of upwelling alga, seaweed. For example, in Rianxo, in La Coruña, they clean 15 tons per day in summer. This work is made by shellfish gather women and is for free. They are not paid for it. And they making a manual way with brakes and with tractors. And they are very worried because they don't know where to put this seaweed. No? The problem is for her. Somebody decided that this matter is a thing for women, and they made it for free. For to be poaching. Women also fights against poaching. Food trips are violent, and women makes surveillance every day in summer. And in some towns in Galicia, women pay more than almost 500 euros per year to hire watchmen. In recent years, moreover, there has been a worsening problem with floating shellfishermen who do not respect the limits marked by the boyas and fish in the area set aside for the shellfishing on foot. Well, pollution is another of the big problems, and the lower productivity. And the main problems for our association is the low presence in the sector representative and governing bodies. In Galicia, there are 63 fishermen guilds. Only 5 of them are led by a woman. Only 5, it's less than the 8%. And the Galicia Federation and the Provincial Federation, there has never been a woman leading them, never. But a year ago, we proposed to the Conselleria do Mar to make a plan to promote women to present to election, and they say us, no, it's not necessary. Well, at the end of October of this year, election will be held in the confraternity, and we do know what is going to happen. We think that is going to be less women. There are also a lack of female leadership in the fishing sector, not only in the cofradías, also in the enterprise and in the mussel farming sector. No? And in this case, it's even worse because the men that are in the main charge are their husbands, their fathers, their brothers, and it's very difficult to fight for your rights in your own home. The only explanation given for this reality is that women are less educated. In no case is there any mention of the double and triple working day of women working in the Galician Sea, who are almost exclusively responsible for domestic work and caring for dependents, nor other more subtle but determining factors such as the criticism of women who decide to be visible and which in many cases impersonal criticisms. Not important if they are good or bad in their jobs, is if they are tall or thin or fat, old. Lack of gender disaggregate statistic. We have tried to access to data of these things, but we can't, and there is no exist too much about that. The current law of cofradías makes no reference to gender parity. It does explicitly to the fact that the election of the governing bodies of shellfish farms must guarantee parity between employers and workers. In this regard, it's very striking that the shellfish gatherers on foot, who are mostly women, are considered self-employed and vote as workers. In reality, they are self-employed with the same social security status as the mostly male afloat shellfish gatherers, who are considered employers. This situation, which on the other hand is not very different from what has happened and is happening in other areas, has led our association to demand the creation of a Galician Observatory for Gender Equality in the fishing sector. After many difficulties, last March, the Galician Parliament approved a PNL urging the Xunta de Galicia to create, in the terms proposed by Mujeres Salgadas, the Galician Observatory, with a budget and for technical staff, and to make a diagnosis and impulse measures to get a real equality. I would like to end my speech with an optimistic message, but I'm afraid that for the moment we are very far from achieving full real equality in Galician fishing sector, and afraid in the rest of Spain, of course. The resistance of a situation imposed and dominated by heteropatriarchy, in which, in addition, issues of control and political dominance are interviewed, keep us far from our goal. We are convinced that change will come about through a feminist vision that promotes social change and in which issues such as quotas are understood as tools to facilitate women's access to the public sphere. Thank you very much.
Christina from the University of Lund in Finland. We will speak about the new network.
Hello, it's an honor to share the stage with you here today, ladies. So I'm very pleased, and thank you for inviting our network to present ourselves. My name is Christina Svels, and a small correction, there is not such a University of Luke at all. I'm from the Natural Resources Institute in Finland, called also abbreviated Luke. And I'm a senior researcher and social scientist. And to start with, the theme of this conference, as we all know, is Imagine the Unimaginable, and we have heard about images this morning. What inspires me is to think of like 50% of the globe's population, like the women part. and to ask myself, how can a research network contribute and help to create a balanced women-men equilibrium in small-scale fisheries? When I 5 years ago, approximately, started to work within the fisheries research sector in Finland, one of the facts that struck me hard and unexpected, I must say, was that our institute, also other institutions in Finland, studied, reported, and discussed fisheries issues together with men and for men. And very few at that time questioned the fact that women involved in fisheries were scarce, and the sector obviously gender unbalanced, as we have also heard in this introduction by Katja. Women have contributed to fishing around the globe as long as the very act of fishing has existed. I like this quote from Britain 2012. And we have no reason to think that their contribution will cease. While the blue context is under pressure, I can offer my right researchers' hand and fingers that these women will take part of fisheries activities as long as men do, perhaps even longer. So my story of today is about our gender research network sisters in Arctic Blue. This is a network for researchers with interest in gender and blue sectors, and how the network came around and where it is aiming in the future. So the abbreviation for the network is SAB, Sisters in Arctic Blue. Not Saab as the Swedish car, but with one A, SAB. In a postdoc application of mine some years ago, with the aim to study women in fisheries organizations, one of the tasks planned was to have an advisory body, a group of people supporting and giving advice. I had the interest in gender questions, yet I was lacking contacts and gender-related projects prior to my application. Then I contacted Katja and also Siri Gerard, who is perhaps online here today. And both they generously supported my proposal, which at the end was not successful, but that's not your fault, it's totally my fault. And some years later, the SAB 4 founding members, who all are here today, we have at the table Kristin Onanian and Madeleine Gustafsson, and here Milena. We were the ones that found ourselves writing a proposal to the Nordic Council of Ministers under the Arctic Cooperation Program, and we got funded for 1 year. The trigger for us was that we had a vision, and we all had research backgrounds in blue sector and social research disciplines, and we had found a call that fitted our vision, and we had established friendship over the year and wanted to work together, which for us was really one of a major thing, that we want to enjoy what we are doing and with whom we are doing it. Although all 4 of us originating from gender politically correct countries as Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, we were concerned that the attention on gender has waned and also has been challenged during time. The network allowed us to find ways to draw attention to gender issues relating to blue spaces and to blue economy. Stimulated and embraced by strong Nordic social science and gender researchers, we also wished to continue the generational transition of what researchers prior to us had started. So we founded our research network 1 year ago in September, and we launched it in April, invited by Siri to Tromsø, to the Arctic University and the Gender Research Center. So we are not gender science researchers per se, like aiming to unfold the meaning of gender. Although we are extremely aware that a portion of activism is critical to correct the gender balance in the society and to find equality between women and men as the fundamental right it is, and to further empower women in the blue sectors to reach gender equality in the blue economy. But also here today, as we saw that you introduced, we had like 4 men for the first session, and now we have 8 women sharing the same amount of time. Just something for you to think about. But the aim for the SAB network has initially been to establish and expand collaboration among early career and senior social science researchers, and provide open access to networks, projects, and proposals. Our experience have been that we also, as early career researchers, we need the help to get, as women, to get into the academic world, perhaps, or we need to help each other, simply. We also want to lift the horizon and work more broadly with overlapping gender topics of blue economy. We have new sectors coming up, but also with fisheries, aquaculture, tourism, shipping, transport, energy, and so on. So we don't only want to focus on fisheries, but also on other blue sector economies. We want to connect objectives and leverage other gender research networks into the SAB network. We have a close connection to Actea, of course, but also we want to stretch out to other networks around. We don't know really where to find these networks, but perhaps from this room we will pick up some red threads after this conference. And the aim of the work after the initial stage is to extend our connections outside the research establishment, and we want to find our way to the real blue sector women, as we have here today. And we want to learn from you and also collaborate with you to find our common path. SAB is associated to the Nordic institutions through our funder, the Nordic Council of Ministers. However, we welcome both researchers working within the Arctic and originating from the Arctic. Still, and most importantly, we will not close any doors for anybody outside this Arctic sphere, nor to science disciplines, but as long as it's related to blue sector and social science, with a gender perspective, we are speaking the same language. And I stress that the SAB network welcomes all gender. And just to wrap up, referring back to my initial question, how can a research network do something for the small-scale fishery and the women and men balance? My answer is, firstly, we need to have a gender perspective in all blue sector research and in all proposals and in all presentations and so on. So we just keep feeding the audience that this is really important stuff. And secondly, I would argue that by finding the new generation of researchers also interested in gender issues and helping them with the start and entry into the research communities, just to slightly open the doors and say, come here, come, we will guide you and we will help you and we will extend our own networks, that will help a lot. So, for a better integration for the gender perspective in ocean policies issue that requires strategic planning, we know, and organization, supported by partnerships and networks, the networks have to be of both, or have to constitute of both men and women. We need to listen to all people in order to grow as individuals and as communities. And just one final note before I end. At the moment, the sub-network is composed and supported by approximately 30 to 40 self-reported members. And now you ask yourself, where do I find this amazing network? Well, I will tell you, you can go, we use Twitter as our platform. So you will find us as SAB_netWK. And there you can also register through a link to become a member. Or the most simple solution is to talk and approach Milena here, Kristen, Madeleine, or myself during these days. We will love to talk to you about these things. Thank you.
Costanza.
I had a PPT presentation. I don't know if it's possible to show it. Perfect. So I'm Constance. I work at the GFCM, the General Fisheries Commission for the Mediterranean. So maybe to start with just a few words on what is the GFCM, although some of you may already know who we are. The General Fisheries Commission for the Mediterranean is part of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. And focuses mainly on the Mediterranean and Black Sea region. It's constituted of 23 contracting parties, including the EU, and the main objective is to ensure the conservation and sustainable use of living marine resources and the sustainable development of aquaculture. And it has a critical role in fisheries governance because it has the authority to adopt binding recommendations for fisheries conservation and fisheries management, and also for aquaculture. Sorry. So, presenting the GFCM perspective on the role of women in the Mediterranean, first we have actually poor data on the role of women in fisheries. It's quite limited and often limited to vessel-based employment. It's a bit tricky here. Can I maybe try? Oh, there we go. Okay. So to give you a rough idea, total employment of fisheries, of onboard vessels in the fisheries sector in the Mediterranean amounts to 202,000, and only 1% of this total represents women working on board vessels in fisheries, so very poor. But this, the data that is collected for fisheries, regarding employment often excludes non-vessel-based employment, and so it excludes the pre-harvest sector, the post-harvest sector, gleaners and shore-based fishing, which often is done by women, but also excludes the invisible work that is done by women in the household. And if we consider and evaluate this data, it approximately amounts to 500,000 total employment. So it's 2.5 times vessel-based employment. So it should actually be taken into consideration. To give you an idea of why the data is limited, here we have a graph where you maybe don't see the numbers very well, but an idea of the GFCM countries throughout the Mediterranean collecting data. 95% of the countries collect data that are vessel-based, but only 30% of these countries collect data that is non-vessel based. So we have poor information regarding this sector. But other than that, other to collecting data, the other issue is collecting data that is disaggregated, so focusing on men and women. And so here you can see that regarding non-vessel-based activities, no countries, part of the GFCM, collect data that is disaggregated. So this leads to poor information and limited knowledge of the actual role of women in Mediterranean fisheries. So first at FAO level, because the GFCM is part of the FAO. So the strategic views of FAO is shaped by the objectives outlined by the Corporate Policy on Gender Equality 2020-2030. And these objectives highlight 4 key dimensions to be addressed promote gender equality in the fisheries sector and to orient FAO's work on this matter. So specifically, the objectives highlight the need to promote women's equal rights, access to and control over the productive resources needed to work efficiently in the fisheries sector. The need to facilitate their access to different kind of support services to enhance their capacities and skills and to enhance the access to markets and to decent job opportunities. These objectives also highlight the need to ensure their equal participation and leadership in any sexual organization and institutions, so it'd be rather cooperatives or producer organizations. And finally, these objectives highlighted by FAO highlight the need to reduce the disproportionate burden of unpaid work, domestic and care, that prevent women from dedicating some time to education, to training, and other income-generating activities. So now at GFCM level, the GFCM recently launched in 2021 the new 2030 strategy over 10 years with specific overarching objectives of achieving sustainability in the SSF sector in the Mediterranean Black Sea. And this strategy is articulated over around 5 main targets. First targets for fisheries and ecosystems, the second target on compliance and enforcement, the third target on aquaculture, the fourth target on livelihoods with the most social protection aspect, and then the fifth target on capacity development. And gender is a cross-cutting theme in this strategy, and each component in each target has a specific aspect that is addressing gender and making sure that the role of women is considered and that gender inclusivity is promoted. In particular, in the target 4, that is addressing livelihoods with decent employment and engaged fishers towards profitable fisheries, there are specific outputs, in particular output 4.1, which enhances sustainable livelihoods by fostering decent work conditions and productive employment opportunities for both women and men. And the second output, which strengthens the understanding of the socioeconomic impact of fisheries and sheds the light on the role of women in fisheries, including gleaning activities and pre-harvest and post-harvest activities. And of course, this strategy also calls for the implementation of the GFCM and Friends of SSF Regional Plan of Action for Small-Scale Fisheries, which is the main instrument that guides the work of the GFCM for small-scale fisheries in the Mediterranean, and is the regional instrument that implements the SSF guidelines. So the Regional Plan of Action for Small-Scale Fisheries was developed and adopted, let's say, in 2018, and is divided into 9 main topics of areas of action for small-scale fisheries. So you can see that the women and gender is a whole chapter, a whole area of activity that is part of the regional plan of action and therefore part of the work that GFCM is dedicated to achieving. So some of the main actions that are done for the role of women, to address the role of women and make sure they're considered, is to enable women to engage in small-scale fisheries activities, to secure their equal participation in the decision-making process, and also to have technology that is appropriate to the work of women in small-scale fisheries, whether it be pre-harvest or post-harvest. So from the strategic view, now we have also activities that are ongoing in the region and that are being implemented, first by enhancing knowledge, the knowledge that we have on the role of women in fisheries in the Mediterranean again. And so the GFCM has launched a socioeconomic survey which has a specific focus on collecting gender disaggregated data to better understand the role that women have in the sector. And FAO has also launched country gender assessments for the agricultural and rural sector, and which also have a special component dedicated to gender and fisheries. Slide. Perfect. And so other activities that are being implemented for women in the Mediterranean are awareness raising activities. For example, in 2018, during the Regional Plan of Action for Small-Scale Fisheries Conference, there was a specific panel dedicated to women to understand their role and to start the discussion for this specific issue. There have been advocacy events for women organization, especially in partnership with Actia, mainly. And we have also organized a specific SSF Forum workshop on women. The SSF Forum is workshops that are aimed to fishers, fish workers in small-scale fisheries, of course, on different topics, and it was launched in 2020, so that's fairly recent. And we had organized a workshop on women, where some women who are here actually shared their experience and talked about their own organizations. And finally, other awareness-raising activity, the establishment of an online community of practice on gender and food systems to facilitate exchange of knowledge and good practices. Some organizations are doing some activities in some countries, and it's great to have the opportunity to share, exchange, and be able to maybe replicate in your own country. And so some targeted projects that the GFCM is implementing, in particular in Tunisia. For example, there are several projects that are being implemented for the past 5 years or so, providing technical and vocational training to women there, to provide services and tools, support the development of micro projects for market access, income generation, for example, to support women engaged in small-scale fisheries activities. For example, right now in September, there is a team from the GFCM who is now in Tunisia training women for aquaculture activities. So there is a lot more to do, but activities are starting and ongoing, so let's hope for the best. Thank you.
Merci, Constance. Avant de passer aux présentations des femmes, non, il y a une vidéo. Sorry, there is a video in... no, not that one. It was a link. Vas-y. Ah, yes, this. We will show a small movie we realized in Brest with a woman selling fish in France.
partie directement en fait, dans le vêtement sans savoir réellement ce que je voulais faire. Et j'ai bifurqué dans le poisson après mon apprentissage. Et j'ai travaillé dans 3 grandes distributions. Puis la dernière m'a poussé en fait à me mettre à mon compte. Quand j'ai lancé mon entreprise, à la base, je voulais ouvrir une poissonnerie. En fait, j'étais guidée par une comptable qui m'a conseillé de faire les marchés dans un premier temps et de faire ma clientèle. Et en fait, j'adore les marchés. Ça fait 5 semaines, mais c'est le fait d'être dans un magasin, de toute manière, les clients viennent à toi. Donc là, moi, je vais aux clients et on voit des personnes différentes tout le temps, quoi. Moi, ce que j'apprécie, c'est le poisson, c'est pas un poisson, enfin, c'est pas un produit qui est facile à vendre quand c'est en entier. Et parce que les gens rebutent face à ce produit-là, parce que ils se disent comment on va faire à la maison. Et du coup, c'est agréable de se dire qu'on prépare le produit et que les personnes, ils arrivent chez eux, le produit, il est fini, et ils ont juste à le cuisiner, quoi.
J'en mets 3, c'est ça 4. Et est-ce que tu peux enlever la tête? Enlever la tête et les vider, il n'y a pas de problème, ouais.
Après, quand j'ai commencé, au tout début, je travaillais qu'avec mon père. Après, il y a plusieurs personnes avec qui je travaille. C'est des fils de pêcheurs qui ont plus ou moins mon âge et du coup, de fil en aiguille, j'ai travaillé avec eux, quoi. Nous ici, on travaille en fonction des marées, donc on peut se dire qu'une semaine sur 2, il n'y aura pas de poisson, quoi. Du coup, je travaille avec un marailleur d'Audierne. Je travaille pas avec des gros chaluts parce que je veux pas que ça détruise non plus la ressource. Donc du coup, certes, il y a moins de marchandises ou des fois je suis pas sur le marché parce qu'il y aura pas assez de marchandises sur l'étal, mais je préfère fonctionner comme ça que avoir tout et n'importe quoi sur l'étal. J'adore ce que je fais. Après, je pense comme toute personne, on a besoin d'avoir des challenges, d'évoluer. Et dans l'optique, en fait, ça serait travailler tout ce qui est poisson, des poissons qui sont un peu esquintés, et du coup, essayer de retravailler un maximum les produits abîmés et pas les jeter, quoi.
Can we return back on the... Can we return back on the PowerPoint? In fact, Elsa, she said she's a daughter of fisherman in Le Conquer harbor near to Brest, and her first wish was to become fisher. And her father didn't allow her to go fishing, so she became selling fish. It was another option for her. Since she opened her, she established the processing unit, and she developed her activity also differently by preparing something new. So now we move to the fisher women that we have in here. So we will start with Marimbel. So the translation will be done by Einder for Marimbel.
Wow. Hola. Soy una mujer pescadora. ¿Hay alguna aquí? ¡Wow! Si hubiera igualdad, perdón, si hubiera igualdad lo cambiaría todo. Y lo digo por mi propia experiencia. Es una excepción.
If there was equality, everything would change. And I say it from my own experience, which is an exception.
En mi barco vamos 2. Ambos somos patrones de la embarcación. Aunque
la haya heredado mi hermano y sea suya.
On my boat, we are two skippers, even though my brother inherited it and is actually the owner.
El trabajo es igual para los dos y nos lo repartimos. Donde no llega uno, llega el otro, y lo que no piensa uno, lo piensa el otro. Hay tanta compenetración que nos movemos por gestos. No hace falta palabras ni órdenes.
The work is exactly the same for both of us, and we work as a team. What one can do, the other does, and what one doesn't think, the other thinks, and no orders or even words are needed.
Soy una mujer afortunada, trabajo en mi pasión y mis compañeros de oficio me arropan y me cuidan.
I'm a lucky woman because my work is my passion and my colleagues take care of me.
La mujer siempre ha formado parte del sector, pero en tierra, reparando las artes, vendiendo el pescado, llevando el papeleo, poniendo todo al día para que pueda salir a faenar, un trabajo invisible.
Women have always been part of the fishing sector, but they used to stay at land, repairing the gears, the nets, selling the fish, doing the paperwork, and setting everything up so that we can go out fishing. It's an invisible job.
Existen barreras para poder lograr la igualdad hoy de la mujer en la pesca, las mismas que años atrás.
There are many barriers to achieving equality for women in fisheries today, the same as has always been.
No ha existido avance en la pesca. Desde mi posición de pescadora, la mujer que quiera ser pescadora lo tiene muy difícil porque se encuentra con barreras.
There has been no progress in fisheries for women who wants to start fishing because they always encounter barriers.
Empecé con 7 años, con mi padre, y me encontré con la primera dificultad, la oposición de mi abuelo materno. Ahí tuve suerte. Mi padre me apoyó.
I started when I was 7 years old with my father, and I had my first barrier, which was my grandfather, my mother's father, that didn't approve it. But luckily, my father supported me.
Pero ahí no acaba mi jornada laboral. Luego ayudaba a mi madre a poder vender el pescado capturado del día, haciendo viajes con la bicicleta y más mayor con la moto, de cubos de pescado.
But my working day didn't finish there. After a whole day of fishing, I had to help my mother to sell the fish and transporting buckets of fish with my bike and then my motorbike.
Otro obstáculo fue la cofradía de pescadores, que me impidió hacer el curso para poder enrolarme en el barco de mi padre, hasta que se impuso mi madre y mi padre.
Another obstacle was the cofradía, which is a fishers organization, which didn't allow me to take the mandatory course to be able to join my father's boat. But luckily, both of my parents insisted and supported me, and that's how I officially became a fisherwoman.
Me he perdido. Así empecé a ser oficialmente una pescadora.
That's how I officially became a fisherwoman.
Hoy esa oposición sigue estando. Conozco casos de mujeres que han querido embarcarse y el patrón le ha dicho que no porque había más hombres pescadores en el paro y que le diría a su mujer.
Today, those difficulties are still present. I even know some women who wanted to go on board and the skipper wouldn't let them because he said that there were more fishermen unemployed than women.
También hay que decir que hay pescadores que aceptan que sus mujeres o hijas sean pescadoras y las apoyan, pero hay que decir porque han visto un referente y lo aprueban.
I also have to say that some fishermen accept that their wives or daughters become fishers and they support them, but mostly it's because they have seen a reference point before.
También en la escuela náutica pesquera, las pocas alumnas optan por estudiar la rama de marina mercante para optar otros trabajos en tierra. Sin embargo, la rama de pesca no se opta por sus dificultades.
Also, in the nautical fishing school, the few female students usually choose to study on the merchant navy to apply for jobs in land rather than fishing because of its difficulties.
Otra dificultad está en que las mujeres seguimos llevando el peso del hogar, de la familia, como pasa en otros trabajos, pero los pescadores tenemos triple sobrecarga.
Another difficulty is that women still have to deal with all the housework, to take care of the family, as it happens in many other works, but fisherwomen have a triple overload.
El trabajo diario sin horario, la conciliación familiar, el hogar, necesita ayuda de terceros para poder cumplir.
Daily work without a timetable, managing the taking care of the family, the household. We need help from someone else if we want to be able to fulfill everything.
A estas dificultades nos encontramos con una barrera aún mayor, la ausencia de leyes que hagan posible el acceso de la mujer a la pesca.
In addition to these difficulties, we face an even greater barrier, the lack of laws for women in fishing.
Quiero remarcar la palabra ausencia, porque lo que se promueve es de difícil cumplimiento, lo que hace que se convierta en un imposible.
I would like to emphasize the word lack, because what is being promoted is really difficult to achieve, even impossible.
Soluciones. Subvencionar los embarques de jóvenes y mujeres, hacerlo más accesible para el armador, rebajar la seguridad social al embarcar jóvenes o mujeres.
Some ideas could be to subsidize the embarkation of young people and women and make it easier for the boat owners, or to lower the social security prices for young people or women.
La última situación de la pesca actual también es preocupante. Falta el relevo generacional, la crisis en el sector, renuncia de tener hijos para poder ir a pescar, poca visibilidad y desconocimiento social del sector.
Finally, the current situation of fishing is still worrying because of the lack of generational change, the crisis on the sector, having to give up having children in order to be able to go fishing, and the lack of visibility and social ignorance of the sector.
Me gustaría que hubiera más pescadoras, porque una se siente sola. Sí que tengo muchos compañeros, pero hay cosas que no puedo decir ni explicar. En Cataluña, de donde soy, hay solo 8 mujeres que faenan en el sector pesquero. Sí.
I wish there were more fisherwomen, because one can feel alone sometimes. I have so many colleagues, but there are some things that I can say. There are only 8 fisherwomen in Catalonia.
Seguiré luchando para que más mujeres se planteen seguir mi ejemplo.
I will continue fighting so that more women dare to continue start fishing and following my example.
Thank you.
Merci, Marimbel. Thank you, Marimbel. In fact, Marimbel shows very well the women's situation, but you will hear just after Sandrine, who will speak on the French side, how fisher women.
Pourquoi ça n'aime pas?
S'il y a de l'électricité.
Oui. Tu restes à côté de moi? Oui. Merci. Organisation. Hello. Hello. Bonjour. Buenos días. C'est bon? À la question posée par Katia, imaginons qu'il y ait une égalité réelle entre les femmes et les hommes dans le secteur de la petite pêche. Je réponds oui.
to the question done by me, because I asked them to think about the real gender equality in fisheries, what will be, she said yes.
Mais il n'y en a qu'une seule à ma connaissance, et c'est celle des salaires. À formation égale, en France, rémunération égale, car elle est basée sur la répartition de la pêche à la part. Mais l'égalité, s'arrête là.
I can say yes, there is, fisheries can be equal on salary, equal training, qualification, give equal salary, because in France we are working with shares. So it's the same for men and women.
En effet, je peux aisément imaginer ce que serait la petite pêche s'il y avait une réelle mixité, en vous racontant un peu mon parcours.
I can easily imagine what small-scale fishing will be like if a real gender diversity was existing, by telling my own story.
J'ai 46 ans, je suis mère de 4 enfants et je suis pêcheur depuis 2007.
I am 46 years old, and I am a mother of 4 children, and I am fisher since 2007.
En épousant un pêcheur, j'ai également épousé le métier de la mer.
By getting married with a fisher, I married also the job.
J'ai très vite compris que ma place, j'allais devoir la gagner en travaillant plus que les hommes.
I understood very quickly that I have to earn my place in the sector by working very, very hard, more than men.
Et c'est exactement ce que j'ai fait, mais en adaptant mon bateau à mes besoins, en valorisant le poisson, en maîtrisant par exemple la technique japonaise de l'abattage ikejime, en économisant mes forces physiques et au profit d'installations et d'outils qui facilitaient mon travail à bord.
Is what I immediately apply by transforming the boat on my needs, and by adding value to the fish products, by learning to master the Japanese method of ikejime, and of course by saving my physical strength by introducing on board technological facilities and tools to make easy my work.
Après avoir obtenu mon premier diplôme comme matelot en Catalogne, en Espagne, j'ai pratiqué la ligne, les casiers, la pêche aux oursins en apnée, mais ensuite les difficultés dans la mer Méditerranée nous ont poussé à quitter le pays et rejoindre la France pour l'Atlantique.
Ça va, hein? On t'a pas poussé à courir. After graduate SS crew in Catalonia, because we forgot to tell you that the husband, he is from Catalonia, that's why she was graduate in Catalonia. I work as I practice line fishing and trap fishing, and also snorkeling for urchin in the Mediterranean. Then finally the problem with the resources pushed them to go back to France in the Atlantic coast.
En France et en Atlantique, j'ai passé mes diplômes de mécanicien et de capitaine. J'étais la seule femme de la promotion, ce qui m'a poussée à mettre un point d'honneur à travailler davantage et être plus performante.
By returning back in France, she prepared the diploma of mechanic on boat on vessel, and also as a skipper. And during when she was at the school, she was working double than men to really obtain her diploma, and she was successful. Vas-y.
Je suis aujourd'hui armatrice de mon propre navire et je travaille aux côtés du père de mes enfants et dont deux de mes fils.
So during the training, she was the only woman at school, and when she got the diploma, she's working on the she's owner of the fishing vessel, and she's working with her, the father of her children, and with the two boys, her two boys. They are really young boys. I mean.
Imaginons donc, pour répondre à la question, qu'il y ait au moins autant de femmes que d'hommes sur les bateaux. Les navires se sont modernisés et la présence de femmes à tous les niveaux, capitaines, mécaniciennes et matelots, est un vrai bénéfice.
So now I can imagine, if I imagine, or I can imagine gender equality in fisheries, I can tell that vessels are now modernizing, and the presence of women skipper.
Est un bénéfice.
Huh?
Est un bénéfice.
It's a benefit for the sector because.
En effet, les navires sont moins rudes, plus confortables, avec plus de sécurité en mer, plus ergonomiques. Les équipages féminins ont apporté des modifications grâce à leurs exigences légitimes.
Because now vessels are modernized, and they are more comfortable and more secure and more ergonomics.
Les équipages féminins.
Women crew produce changes to their legitimate demand.
C'est fini. C'est pas fini. C'est moi maintenant. Comme par exemple avoir des toilettes à bord, avoir des tables de travail pour travailler à hauteur, des mâts de charge qui portent les charges à notre place. Tout ceci a un vrai impact sur l'attractivité du métier et à la fin, sur la qualité même des poissons.
By the claims of the women, they were to have toilets, better working table on boats, loading machine, and having a real impact on the attractivity. Finally, we can tell that all these changes, they gave more attractivity to the job, and of course on the quality of fish.
Ces nouvelles techniques qui ont démocratisé la pêche, qui ne rime plus avec effort physique, est enfin, la pêche est donc est enfin entrée dans le 21e siècle, et même la célèbre salopette jaune masculine s'est déclinée au féminin.
So the new tools that they are on board, then democratize fisheries, which is not anymore based on the strength, physical strength, and finally this job enter on the 21st century, and even the clothes of fisher we saw somewhere. We don't see the pictures, but anyway, the yellow dress that fishermen, they became more and more feminine.
En fait, en se féminisant, la pêche artisanale se rend plus accessible à toutes, mais aussi à tous.
So by becoming more feminine, fisheries become more attractive for young people, and it's more accessible to all, men and women.
Mais je sais évidemment que nous ne sommes pas encore là, et au contraire que les rares femmes qui ont osé s'embarquer sur les bateaux sont encore des pionnières. D'ailleurs, la première en France à embarquer, ou en tout cas a eu le droit d'embarquer en 1963, donc hier.
I just tell that, of course, we are not yet here. We still wait. And in France, the rare women, they are fishers, they are pioneers. And the first one was the first woman allowed to become fisher by the French authority was in 1963, because women, they didn't have the right to become fishermen before.
Aujourd'hui, en 2022, les rares jeunes femmes qui s'inscrivent dans les formations rencontrent beaucoup plus d'obstacles que de soutien.
Nowadays, the young women, they are going to the school to follow the fishing courses. They have a lot of more obstacle than support.
Et finalement, toutes ces difficultés au niveau administratif, à l'accès aux formations, à l'accès aux stages et au simple respect à la liberté de choisir leur carrière freinent beaucoup d'entre elles.
Finally, all these difficulties, administrative and access to the school and training, particularly on fishing boat, in respect and the liberty of to choose their own career, and even the more courageous women that they want to become fishers.
Mais je souhaite personnellement que toutes les femmes qui souhaitent devenir pêcheurs soient encouragées par nous toutes, que le fait de voir une femme pêcheur sur un port ne soit plus anecdotique.
The women, they finally become fishers. They should be supported by all of us. And I wish that women in fisheries, they will not be any more anecdotal as it is today.
Ne plus entendre que ce métier n'est pas fait pour les femmes, car il n'est pas non plus fait pour tous les hommes.
And not hear anymore that fisheries is not an activity for women, because of course it's not also activity for all men. All men cannot become fishers.
Merci. C'est un travail qui a besoin de profondes réformes et d'ouverture, de modernisation, car aucun métier à terre n'est aussi en retard.
It's a work that is needing a deep reform and open to modernization, because from what she knows that on land, none of the different jobs that we have, it's so behind.
Voilà. Merci de m'avoir écouté. En mer, tout est à faire, et c'est bien ça qui est le plus motivant. Thank you.
At sea, everything is still to be done, and it's for this reason that its motivation is here.
Thank you very much.
Merci. Thank you. Raquel, she's a member of Andomar in Grau de Gandia.
Grau de Gandía.
José Pascual will translate.
¿Quieres una copia?
Ah, ¿tú quieres copia?
Al castellano. Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Raquel Llopis Morell. Pertenezco a la Asociación Dones de la Mar. Soy su presidenta. Aparte, formo parte del grupo de trabajo de Actea, que me ha invitado a venir y asistir a esta conferencia. También formo parte de la Asociación Hermanos de Sal, donde les asesoro en temas de pesca y en tema de igualdad de género y de trato de oportunidades para todos y todas. ¡Wow! Un poco difícil.
It works? Now. Okay. Raquel is a member of the Association Women of the Sea in Gandia, and she's also a member of the Association of, can you repeat me?
Hermanos de Sal.
And Brothers of Salt, and she's assessing both of these organizations in a diversity of issues.
Cuando Katia me envió la pregunta para que me la preparara, cuando leí la pregunta que tenía que contestar y que tenía que explicar, me quedé un poco de dónde sacaría una varita mágica para contestarla.
When Katia sent me the question that I had to answer, I was wondering where can I get a magic band to get information to answer the question.
No, la verdad es que la pregunta es la siguiente: ¿cómo sería la situación de las mujeres o de las parejas de los pescadores si hubiera igualdad de oportunidades en Europa?
The question is this one: how it will be the situation of women, of the couple of fishermen, if there were equality in equality of opportunities in Europe and in the sea?
La verdad, y en primer lugar, me parece increíble que en pleno siglo XXI aún exista desigualdad de géneros y oportunidades, no solo en Europa, sino en todo el mundo.
First of all, it is unbelievable for me that in 21st century there exists yet inequality in many areas at sea and at land.
Ello contradice declaraciones esenciales como son la Declaración de los Derechos Humanos, que fue proclamada por la Asamblea General de las Naciones Unidas en París el 10 de diciembre de 1948.
Of course, this contradicts the Declaration of Equality of Human Rights declared by the Assembly of Organization of Nations in Paris in 1948 as a common ideal for all the nations.
Esta resolución era la 217A3, declaraba como un ideal común para todos los pueblos y naciones que en sus artículos 1 y 23 establecen no ya que todos los seres humanos nacen libres e iguales en dignidad y derechos.
This declaration says briefly that all the human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights.
Sino también que toda persona tiene derecho al trabajo, a la libre elección de su trabajo, a condiciones equitativas y satisfactorias de trabajo y a la protección contra el desempleo.
It also says that every person have the right to have a job, to the free election of its job, to equal conditions and good conditions for having for work, and to the protection against unemployment.
Todo esto sin discriminación alguna, a igual salario por trabajo igual, con independencia de que la remuneración debe ser equitativa y satisfactoria.
And this needs to be developed without any kind of discrimination, with equal salary for the same job, with independence that the salary needs to be enough for the job.
Que le asegure al trabajador o a la trabajadora, así como a su familia, una existencia conforme a la dignidad humana y que será completada, en caso necesario, por cualesquiera otros medios de protección social.
And this salary should be enough for providing an satisfactory means of life, a livelihood to the people that depends on this job. And in case of necessity, should be complemented by any other means of social protection.
Y en términos parecidos, se pronuncia el derecho de la Unión Europea, cuyos tratados constitutivos garantizan ni más ni menos que en el artículo 1 del Tratado de la Unión que la misma combatirá la exclusión social y la discriminación y fomentará la justicia y la protección sociales y la igualdad entre mujeres y hombres.
In similar terms, the right of the European Union in the constitutive treaties guarantee in Article 1 that the Union will combat any kind of social exclusion or discrimination and will promote the justice and social protection and the equality between men and women.
Por tanto, no se trata de que haya igualdad formal, sino de que hay obligación de buscar la igualdad real y en especial en el ámbito laboral y profesional.
So it's not only the need for formal equality, but also is needed to look for real equality, and especially in the area of work and professions.
Bastantes Estados miembros de la Unión Europea han implantado derechos de igualdad real, típicamente la titularidad compartida de las explotaciones.
Many countries in the European Union have developed equal rights, in fact, and typically the share ownership of the business.
Y por ello tiene una relevancia muy especial algo que, aunque parecía ser parte de los derechos fundamentales, solo la Carta de Derechos de la Unión Europea ha consagrado definitivamente en su artículo 23.
In this way, it has a special relevance, something that the rights announcement of the European Union has affirmed in his Article 23.
El principio de igualdad no impide el mantenimiento o la adopción de medidas que supongan ventajas concretas en favor del sexo menos representado.
That article says that the principle of equality is not in contradiction with the establishment or the adoption of some measures that suppose advantages, specific advantages in favor of the less represented sex.
Además, en eso reside la novedad de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, que, como es obvio, dan un paso más allá de los derechos fundamentales clásicos.
And of course, this is very relevant to take into account in the objectives of sustainable development that provide a better overview of the traditional fundamental rights.
En concreto, el sector de la pesca es uno de los más retrasados. Afortunadamente, en España se está cerca de dar ese paso, pues solo a principios de este año se ha reconocido que la actividad de las mujeres en el sector pesquero debe dotarse de políticas similares de afirmación positiva, inclusiva, que favorezca a las mujeres alcanzar la igualdad real o, como mínimo, su visibilidad en el conjunto del sector y en cada una de las actividades que el mismo conlleva.
Specifically, the area of fisheries is one of the backward sector. Fortunately, in Spain, we are close to this achievement because at the beginning of this year, it has been recognized that the activity of women in fisheries sector should be improved with policies with positive affirmation. Inclusiveness that favor the role of women until the real equality may be reached, or at least the visibility in the fisheries sector and in each one of the activities of this sector should be equal visibility.
Por lo demás, la situación en el resto del mundo, por desgracia, no va tampoco más allá.
Anyhow, the situation in the rest of the world is not much better.
Este ha sido en concreto el logro de Adomar, al conseguir que en el sector, en cuanto a la nueva ley de pesca sostenible y científica, entre en vigor, esas acciones inclusivas no solo sean posibles, sino que deben ser un principio que rija la política pesquera en España.
This is one of the achievements of Adomar, our association, because we have achieved that in the new law of sustainable fisheries and scientific advice, this action may be included and should be a principle that will be a key element of the new fisheries policy in Spain.
La pregunta, pues, no es cómo sería pensando en un futuro, sino que en estos momentos ya debería haber desaparecido la invisibilidad y la desigualdad real de las mujeres que aún existen en distintas actividades del sector.
So in this scenario, it's not so relevant to think in the future, but to think that this inequality should have been disappeared long ago in this sector.
Toda actividad económica debe estar dirigida al bien común. Existe una obsesión del crecimiento económico a costa de todo. Es el fin y no un medio para conseguir. Había que plantearnos cuáles son los costes de mantener esto.
It's relevant to think that all economic activity should be focused on the common good, on the common well-being. So it makes no sense in this obsession with growth that creates a lot of problems, and the growth is not a common end for everyone. And the economic activities should be focused on as a means to achieve the well-being.
Se deberían generar propuestas alternativas, observar la realidad y complejidad con todos los sujetos, incorporando a las mujeres como protagonistas activas, escuchar cuáles son sus necesidades, cuáles son sus intereses, observar y practicar empatía. Es desde la empatía y reconocimiento que podemos aprender, ponernos en el lugar del que no está conectado a la corriente principal y establecer un cambio de prioridades.
In this context, we should look to the diversity. We need to look for alternative proposal, observe the reality and the complexity of this reality, and take into account all this diversity in order to focus for a better perspective in the future.
Hay que poner la atención en las necesidades humanas, regenerar el sistema de convivencia y actuar de manera que el desarrollo de unos seres no aniquile las posibilidades de desarrollo y culturales de otros seres. Si todo esto se hiciera realidad, se cumplirían todos los tratados, valores y objetivos enumerados anteriormente.
We need to put the focus on human needs. We need to regenerate the way of living and the capacity to live together and act in a way that the development of some people doesn't go against the possibility of cultural development or human development of other persons. If all this will be a reality, and then the three treaties, values and objectives previously announced will be implemented.
Y como pueden ver, la situación de las mujeres o de las parejas de las mujeres cambiaría totalmente. Buenas tardes y muchísimas gracias.
If this will be achieved, all the situation of all the women will change completely.
Do there are any questions in the room? Which perspective we can, from what we hear, which type of perspective do we can suggest to women in fisheries, also to our politicians and our decision makers? Any ideas in the room? Marco?
Thank you. I heard several times that, the fact that if there will be more women in fishery in general, most likely fishery will be more sustainable. May I ask you if this is true according to your point of view? Because this is a typical narrative at the moment. More women, more sustainability.
Yeah? Okay, I have a question from, an answer from Raquel.
A la pregunta, no importa que sean mujeres o que sean hombres, tenemos que trabajar unidos por la sostenibilidad, porque si no trabajamos juntos, unidos, pero ya no solo los pescadores, sino todos los que forman parte de asociaciones y de todo, si no trabajamos unidos, ni habrá sostenibilidad, ni habrá pescadores. Y ahora una pregunta para todos. Si no hubiera pescadores o gente que se dedica a ir al mar, ¿cuánta gente se quedaría sin trabajo? ¿Cuánta gente depende del mar sin ir a pescar? Nos hemos parado a preguntar, a pensar. Tenemos que trabajar juntos. Y la sostenibilidad forma parte de todos, de pescadores y no pescadores.
Okay, my answer is, it doesn't matter if it's women or it's men. What is important is that we work together, because sustainability is responsibility of everyone. So we have to work together and think how many people will lose their jobs if we don't care about sustainability. And it's a responsibility that we share. Thank you.
C'est bon? Oui, à la question, est-ce que la pêche serait plus durable s'il y avait plus de femmes, s'il y avait autant de femmes que d'hommes dans la pêche? Je suis tentée de dire que oui, parce que la pêche artisanale est beaucoup plus accessible pour les femmes que la pêche industrielle, qui détruit beaucoup plus que la pêche artisanale, qui nourrit le littoral, qui est une pêche beaucoup plus durable, puisqu'elle a un impact carbone beaucoup moindre que la pêche industrielle. Et c'est une pêche qui est plus accessible aux femmes que la pêche industrielle pour des raisons familiales, entre autres.
So according to Sandrine, yes, because women are more often or usually working on small-scale fisheries, and small-scale fisheries, it's a more sustainable activity rather large-scale fisheries. So for her, of course, sustainability can be found by using this, by being small-scale fishers.
Hi, my name is Katina. I want to ask, because almost always, when gender is on the table, I just see women discussing. And so my question is, how can we engage men to also fight with us to achieve equality?
Parler sur la table et parler avec les femmes.
Ils peuvent venir.
They can come. Door is open. And
okay. Katia, la pregunta es que me la ha dicho, y yo he dicho que invitándoles a venir, a que den su opinión, no que nos trasladen su opinión a nosotras y nosotras traslademos sus opiniones al resto de la gente. Porque antes yo he contestado a la pregunta, pero es que muchos compañeros también piensan igual que yo.
She thinks that they are all invited already. But, and she knows that there are many men who are there thinking like her. But they just should come. They don't need them to say what they want to say.
Personalmente, yo creo que es por comodidad que no están y un poco por vergüenza de estar aquí sentado cara a todos ustedes.
I think they feel a bit ashamed just to come here and speak in a round table where it's just women there. Okay. No questions.
Yes, thanks for your intervention. One of the main problems that is set for a woman to become a fisherwoman, it's the conciliation with the family. We have here a good example of a fisherwoman with 4 children, if I haven't heard bien. So, and how do you manage the conciliation with your family?
Justement, c'est ce que j'expliquais. À la petite pêche, on a encore la liberté c'est des marées de moins de 12 heures. Et ensuite, moi, j'avais la chance, comme de travailler en famille, donc d'être un peu plus flexible qu'avec un armement où j'étais employée, vu que je travaille sur mon propre bateau. Et en fait, c'est adapter les métiers. Il y a des métiers, on n'est pas obligé de passer toute la nuit en mer. Quand on va faire de la plongée, par exemple, pour pêcher des oursins ou relever des casiers à crustacés, on peut adapter. Donc moi, j'avais la chance de pouvoir déposer mes enfants à l'école, aller travailler, faire mes livraisons, faire mes papiers, faire les courses, préparer à manger, éventuellement, voilà, m'occuper aussi un petit peu de moi et les récupérer à l'école. C'est beaucoup d'énergie, beaucoup de gymnastique, mais dans mon cas, c'est possible.
Okay, I start by the last. It's a lot of energy and a lot of gymnastic, but in small-scale fisheries is possible because we adapt our working hours to our own family needs. If there is not any question in the room, I have one question on the perspective, which type of research can we realize, for example, on research level on gender in fisheries? And I have Madeleine Gustafsson, who is here, and I would like to tell us what she's doing currently in Norway about gender equality.
Hello. Hi, I'm going to sit if that's okay. So I'm Madeleine Gustafsson. I'm a researcher at a research institute in Norway called Ruralis. I really enjoyed all the discussions. That was really interesting. I think kind of just a brief reflection is that maybe in gender research we should also engage with sort of more recent and ongoing debates in the wider community, especially around the blue economy. I was lucky to get some money from the Norwegian Research Council very recently to do a project called Blue Places, and it's really kind of going, taking the discussions here today, thinking through gender in fisheries, but gender more. Equity more broadly. So equity, we do talk about equity within the blue economy, but we don't often talk so much about equity from, for example, a perspective that works, that is able to include gender and gender issues. So the project I will be doing in the future will focus on, so gender equality, but sorry. We're interested in understanding what goes on at sea, how women can be part of sea-based industries, fisheries being one of them, small-scale fisheries being one of them. But also, it's very important to look at how the blue economy kind of flows into onshore spaces and it benefits different types of people in different ways. So, for example, women being a very big group of people that could benefit from the blue economy in different ways or be disadvantaged by the blue economy. So, as we've talked about before here, women provide very many entrepreneurial activities. They are very, very important in adding value to small-scale fisheries, and I think that's connecting to what we're talking about now, but also what we talked about this morning. So to think through more broadly how women benefit from what goes on at sea, but also onshore. and how that's linked to the blue economy more widely and the opportunities. So what we tend to think, when we think about the blue economy, we tend to think about the risks, but as many panelists here today have highlighted, there are also many inequities in the current system. So what we need to also consider is that, can the blue economy discourse provide us with an opportunity to potentially benefit other forms of groups that previously have been, let's say, marginalized? And that is women, young people, indigenous populations, other marginalized groups. So I think research like that might be needed in the future, and I hope to do some of that, and I hope to connect with other people that are interested in that.
Thank you, Natalie. We have 2 questions, but we have to close at 3 from what I know.
Yeah, I actually don't have a question. I just want to make a statement. We are discussing somehow as if gender equality was not a human right. I mean, why should women have to prove that they do certain things? We know from all other sectors in society that when you have mixed teams, even in research, it's now being a big conversation that you need mixed research team, not only gender-wise, but culturally-wise, indigenous people, etc., etc. There is a whole societal debate that, if we want to create good futures, it can only work through justice, and gender equality and the practice of it, more than just declarations, is absolutely fundamental, because we can forget about the rest. Without a justice, we won't have it. So I would not want to go into that debate that we justify anything. It's the other ones who keep the rights away who should be justifying. And we claim those rights and we want to practice them. Thank you.
This is just a note on the issue of sustainability. I mean, when our colleague raised the issue of sustainability and the integration of women, or more equality in fisheries works for women and men, I think there is a view when you reply that is mainly focused on biological sustainability. But when we talk about economic sustainability, then I think women plays an important role. First, because they can guarantee some way the replacement, the generational replacement in fisheries. There is another issue. I think there is a lot of work, this household cares, that is not with salary, that is in fact making fisheries more profitable. So that makes also, like subsidies, fisheries sustainable for all of us. I think if women are in fisheries, economically talking, fishery could be more sustainable. So that would be a good argument for that in this sense. This is a point of that. Another issue is that, what are the solutions? There is a general problem, it's a cultural problem, the households, the cares, all this stuff. I think we need a very big social system in Western economies and non-Western economies to support that. That is an important and a general problem for all economies. There is another element, sharing the work with men in these activities that should be higher. And this is a cultural and educational problem that we have to solve over fisheries issues. It's a general problem in our society. I was thinking in a specific solution to make fisheries more equally in terms of gender. And it's very difficult for me to take ideas of how to do it specifically for fishing, I think. There is an important issue. There's the education point that has been raised by you, because education is important that women study skipper skills for being part of fishermen activity, but there is an important problem to overcome. I don't know if you have any proposal on this for a specific solution for fisheries sector to make fisheries more equal in terms of gender. This is my point.
Just have a quick answer from Raquel.
I can tell that in Spanish if you want also. I don't know.
No, I will translate for her what she said. It's very easy. What you cannot see, like women, invisible, you cannot count. What you cannot count doesn't exist. So first is some visibility, at least. It's a proposal.
Sven has something to tell, and then I think we have. I can respond to your question.
In 2014, all the FAO member states endorsed the small-scale fisheries guidelines. And if you read those guidelines, which I suggest that everyone does, you will see that gender issues is running through the text from the beginning until the end. And there is a lot of talk about human rights as something that we should take for granted. We know that we cannot necessarily do that because around the world, but there is they do represent a watershed in many ways. There are things we do not need to argue for many of these things that we argued in the past. We need to take into account in the way we argue about small-scale fisheries, including about gender, that the small-scale fisheries guidelines already exist and that all these countries have endorsed it. So the question is, how do we change the way we talk about small-scale fisheries from a gender perspective now, relative to how we did it before? There are things we do not need to repeat and repeat and repeat. We can sort of move on and say, now we have agreed on that. All the member states agree with that. So what do we do now?
Yes,
Sven, Raquel has an answer also here. She said that last week, she went to a meeting in FAO, and it was the first time that she heard about the guidelines, the existence of the guidelines.
And of course, just to answer a little to your question, and then I can tell you real. In fact, we are waiting more than, I don't know, as women, we are waiting gender equality in all society since centuries. And all of us, we know that the power, it's always in the man, is men hands. And so we still wait. So the guidelines or the Treaty of European Union, or it's in the hand of men. If we don't act as women by doing such meetings, we will never achieve gender equality. And concerning the equality in fisheries, I suggest to the European Union and even to the French Minister of Fisheries, Agriculture, that if we need to do a positive discrimination, it's time to do positive discrimination. Because if we have on all our fishing boats only foreigners, and we're going to keep our fishing sector in Europe running, where we will find the crew? We are dependent from Peru, from Tunisia, from Indonesia here, in Cyprus from Egypt, in Greece from Egypt, and so I don't know, in France from Portugal. No, this is intra-European. Anyway, Senegal, and so on. So why we don't open the door to women? By giving, for example, to fishing boats that they employ women, some, as the economists tell, economic compensation. The response, it was the response of our men politicians, but it's forbidden, it's discrimination, it's gender discrimination. You discriminate men. That's the answer of our politicians. So, yes, we can do it. Why we cannot do it? The Japanese, they done it because they cannot find any more people to work in their fisheries cooperatives. So if they don't have 25 members, they close the cooperative. So they open the cooperatives to women membership. So why we don't do that in Europe? We saw how it's happened during the COVID. The people from abroad, they couldn't come in Europe, and our fishing fleet, small and not the small, it's okay, it works because they are local, but the other fleet. So why not? We just put some toilets on the boat. We just put some shower on the boat, and probably we need to modernize our boat. to have that. So we have to think about it. Yes, Sven, you had something.
Is there somebody else that wanted to say something?
Okay, just, I would like to rectify also some notion we seem to have. Because actually, in times when the men are at sea all the time, who is running the show? It's actually the women who are the managers of the family enterprise. What happens with the pro-industry policies is that the women get structurally degraded into wage jobs or something because and their entrepreneurial role is stripped away from them. And I think there is something we have to defend and recognize and stem the tide, because we can very well think of alternatives. We see that in all other businesses, they outperform the ones who do it traditionally.
Yes.
So let's go for it.
Yeah, with less of 20% of salary, of course.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ratan. I think we
not
have
even.
No, I hate to break a good
We don't hear you.
conversation. I don't know why, because the microphone is on.
Can I make a question?
There is something to add here, so you should wait 1 minute.
It's not a question. I just would like to thank them for being here. Y gracias por ser valentes and more than your male colleagues. And I would also like to thank the organization for being brave of organizing this session and putting it the first day, the second hour, not the last day, the last hour.
That's great.
Thank you.
Can I get the microphone? The tech people, can people hear me now? I don't know whether people can hear me, Evan.
Yes, now it's okay.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean, I also enjoyed this conversation very much. Merci beaucoup and gracias, muchas gracias. We just need to continue. We will continue with the conversation, of course, right? This is just the start of the Congress. So many good ideas, so many really enthusiastic comments, and a lot of food for thoughts already. I think we will continue to think about how to secure, we have the guidelines, as Sven just mentioned. We also have SDG 14B, which is about securing space, access to resources and markets for small-scale fisheries, and also for women of small-scale fisheries or women in fisheries in general. So there's a lot to be done, a lot to be continue with the conversation, and which we will. We have 2 more days to do this. Right now, we just know that people really want to move into the practice space, the action space, which I think it's a good thing, because we don't need to, debate so much anymore. I think we have a bit of consensus and that momentum to move forward. So let's spend some time in the next couple of days thinking about what we can do in practice, right? What we can do, what we can move into action in order to really realize all these ideas and all the images and the rights and what we look for here. So thanks again, everyone, for great 2 plenary sessions already. You would be moved into the concurrent sessions. There are 4 concurrent sessions. You just go in as you like. This is a regular conference, of course. Virtual participants, you can also jump in and out and participate in any session you like. Time is a little bit tight, so it's only 90 minutes for the session. It will start in about 3:30 your time, local time. So please, grab your coffee and go enjoy. And then the second parallel session that would happen right after the first one, there's only 15 minutes break. So make sure that, you just go right into it, right? And after the second sessions, we would then have that reception. So tomorrow we'll be seeing you again at 9 o'clock in the morning for the plenary number 3, which is about Imagine Good Subsidies. And tomorrow there'll be 2 plenaries also. The second plenary will be in the afternoon. It's about imagining low impact fishing. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Katia, for Milena, and all the speakers for this great session. And enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow.